Bienvenidos, welcome, benvenuti baseball friends to another digital plate appearance of our podcast. I'm your host, DJ Guarenas, creator of Guareneo en 3 y 2 en español and HomePlate.33 in English. Thanks for joining us today. Umpires are busy checking the topics lineup and setting up the ground rules. Our Home Runeros team is at the top of the step, ready to jump onto the cyber baseball diamond. Pitch clock is set. Let's talk baseball. This is your Home Plate podcast. Baseball from north to south. Hello, baseball friends around the globe. Thanks for joining us during our second digital at bat here at HomePlate 33, the podcast. And as always, we're being brought to you by Accessorios Corp, door-to-door shipping experts in Miami to Venezuela, and Pin2Web, our online painting portal in Venezuela, and our recent sponsors, NG Tax and Accounting Services. Leave your taxes in the hands of the experts. You can contact them at 470-737-7465. For more information, just give them a call and they'll be able to help them out. Each episode, we treat them as a different season because obviously no season is exactly the same as the other one, and we break it down the following way. We break it down into spring training. That's where we introduce our guests. I'll unveil our topic lineup. Then we go into opening day, where we go high-level summary of the topics that we're going to be discussing, and a little bit of this, a little bit of that. Then we go into the regular season, where we really dive into the topic that we want to talk about. Then we'll take an All-Star break. Everybody needs a break anyway. So then we'll talk about anything that has to do with our partners, anything we want to talk about. Then we'll talk about the trivia question of the day. Then we'll go into the trade deadline, which we'll call the bullpen, and continue talking about baseball and more baseball, because this is all about in this particular podcast. Then we'll go into the postseason. In that particular section, we'll talk about things outside the field that might not necessarily apply to day-to-day operations, but definitely related to baseball. And then the last section, we'll go into the World Series, where we give an executive summary of what we talked about and give you the answer of the trivia question of the day. And if for whatever reason our guest wants to keep talking about stuff, we'll go into the extra innings, where we actually will have plenty of time to talk about that. Well, the pitcher is walking to the mound. The hitter is putting pine tar on the bat. So let's start in spring training. Spring training. So here's spring training. So the topics are posted on the dugout wall. And first, but not most important part, we'll introduce our guest today, Mr. Alex Eriksson from Chill TV Sports in Chilliwack. How's it going, Alex?
Good. How you doing, buddy? How's the off season treating you?
So far so good. I know, like a bit cold, but we're managing. And we'll make it work one way or the other.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, no worries. What was our temperature at practice on Sunday?
It was -5, wind chill -11.
So a good Canadian summer temperature. We're all in shorts.
Absolutely. We were wearing sandals, right?
100% with our arms and all that good stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah, happy to be here, buddy. Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, thanks, Anna. Thanks for joining us. So let's go through the topics that we'll talk about in each section. So the most important one, like we talked about before we were preparing for this podcast, it will be on opening day. We'll talk about the arm injury report that came out a couple of months ago from MLB. What's our take on it? There's a lot of information there. Some of them surprising, some of them not so much, but we'll definitely dissect that. Then we'll go into the regular season, talking about the baseball notable days for 2025 and the notable teams to watch. There's a few interesting teams and a few tips that we can actually give you to actually make some money maybe next year. I don't know. Then we'll go into the All-Star break, which we'll talk about. We'll give you a hint of our trivia question. We'll talk about our sponsors. We'll talk a little bit of our league with LNBA. We'll talk about Chilliwack Adult Baseball, which Alex and I are part of. We're very passionate about that because adults we still have some in the tank. It's not over at 19. We still can make it work. After that, we'll go into the trade deadline, which we'll talk about the deferred money phenomenon, separating the big market teams and small market teams. That'll be an interesting topic because there's a lot of information going around back and forth. Then we'll go into the postseason, look at that section that we talk about outside the diamond. We'll talk about the Sammy Sosa going into the Hall of Fame for the Cubs after that weird apology. I don't know. I find it as a juicy topic because, I mean, there's a lot of information there that can be construed as, yeah, it was long overdue, but at the same time, it can't. But no, then it was actually more of a publicity stunt. I don't know. That's what we have, Alex. So we can actually talk about it and go back and forth and talk about it. And then we'll wrap up the World Series with the trivia question answer and what's in stock for the next episode. So, Alex, our trivia question of the day is who is the pitcher? Like, it doesn't have to be Canadian, but who's the pitcher with multiple MLB no-hitters outside the United States that has never played for a Canadian team? This doesn't have to be a Canadian per se, but it's one of those phenoms that has actually thrown 2 no-hitters outside.
So this is an American or a Japanese or a Latin American player.
Can be anything. Non-Canadian player, yeah.
Who has put up 2 no-hitters, not in America.
That is correct.
But is it MLB? Are we counting
MLB? No, it's MLB only, yeah.
Okay, so we're not counting the Japanese or the Korean or any of the Latin leagues.
No, like, I mean, if the no-hitter happened to happen, then like when they play in the Tokyo series, is a different conversation. But it had to be counted for MLB. Yeah,
that's
exactly.
my first guess.
What's that?
Sandy Koufax, the mythical pitcher himself.
Yeah, close but no close.
Okay.
We'll give you a hint in our All-Star break section. But it's definitely one of those ones that it might be obvious, but not so obvious. I know once you actually hear, it's like, really, that guy? But that's kind of like, and that's an interesting part of having the trivia question every time we actually have our podcast. So now that we have our trivia question, let's jump into opening day series. Opening day. All right. Now in our opening day section, we'll talk about the arm injury report released by MLB. Definitely some interesting outcomes there. They break it down into about 5 topics or 5 general areas in terms of the result of that particular report. Key thing is the most important one that they talked about, and that basically seems to be the common denominator here, that the consensus is most of the injuries come from a max effort velocity and the stuff driving that particular injury. What do you think about that, Alex?
I mean, this has come up in conversation before about the prevalence of arm injuries, and I think, I mean, it's sort of a double-edged sword of how good the training is now, and especially how good these kids are throwing at an early age, just mechanically, and the video resources that they have, the feedback they're getting, the coaching that they're getting. There's a lot less, the players that can develop the velocity are developing the velocity, and the players that naturally have this are developing it as well. So,
yeah,
pitching's such a game of finesse. I don't know if this was the thing when you were growing up, but my dad would always bash me over the head saying no curveballs until you're like 16.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Fastball, you have to learn how to pitch instead of throw, right? So,
but if you watch Little League World Series, those kids are throwing junk all over the place, and it's good stuff. So, I think the muscle development, the technique development is there, but maybe the physicality of the joints isn't coming up, and the fact that we have guys that can throw this hard. And I know, the old heads might talk about how Nolan Ryan threw 1,000,000 miles an hour until he was 85 years old, and there's still going to be those genetic freaks.
Oh,
but
absolutely.
For the most part, the high velo guys become, pitch shapers and off-speed guys to prolong their careers. And so I think we're just, they're able to get more out of their arm, and it's a high risk, high reward game.
Yeah, and it's kind of one of those things, especially when I read this. The first picture that actually comes to mind is Jamie Moyer. I mean, you're gonna
Mhm.
get a guy that on like throw a fastball at what, like 80, 82, 85, and he still was able to get people out.
Mhm.
And obviously, you have like you said, let's call it freaks for argument's sake. You have Paul Skeens that actually gonna throw 105, or you have our oldest
Mhm.
Chapman throwing. Those guys are naturally gifted in terms of the speed, and then you have those guys that naturally they can throw 94, 90, 95, trying to hit 100. And of course, I mean, one way or the other, I know, like it's physically, I wouldn't say impossible because obviously they get to actually throw it, but I mean, they're pushing their bodies beyond what their bodies are capable of actually doing. Then, of course, that explains that max effort part of it, right? So, and also shortening the game for a lot of those pitchers, like as you very well mentioned earlier, those guys, like for example, like the Nolan Ryans in the world, they were there for like 150, 170 pitches. These guys are there for maximum 100. And if they're in the bullpen, you're 20 max effort, and that's about it, right? So
Mhm.
it doesn't surprise me, the max effort part of it. Um, but they don't really talk about why that max effort is, which kind of like I think it's a shortcoming of the report itself. But I totally agree with you. I mean, sometimes, especially when you're young, you want to learn how to pitch, not how to throw. Because just because you throw 105 doesn't actually mean you can actually sit back and hit it out of the park because you're waiting for it, right? So you need to know how to hit the corners and so on. So, and by the way,
And
Alex is a
you know,
catcher like me, so we definitely know a little bit about that part.
yeah, we squat down and watch these fools game in and game out and have to deal with it. I
Yeah.
wonder too, like a car analogy comes to my mind in relation to the fact that how many complete games are being thrown now,
Hmm.
even how many 7 inning starts are occurring. I would assume that,
Yeah.
and I don't have the numbers up next to
Yeah.
me here, but I would assume that that's just a downward spiral with the number
Oh,
of pitchers that are
absolutely.
three,
Yeah.
4, 5 innings, and that makes me think that these are, the comparison of the BMW versus the Toyotas, right? The
Yeah.
higher maintenance but higher performance for those short bursts versus the durability to go 80%. The Roy Halladay's of the world who can
Yeah.
will throw 9 innings. You know, 60% of their starts are going to go for the most of the game. So,
Yeah.
and also just a testament to how good the hitters are, right? Like
Exactly.
the fact that this is the most difficult task in all of sports is to hit a baseball, and the pitchers are better than ever, and the hitters are
Yeah.
so good at making
Yeah.
contact that the pitchers are having to go 100%. Otherwise,
Yep.
they're going to get eaten.
Yeah. No, and you're absolutely right. I mean, that's kind of one of those things that this particular generation, especially generation of fans, maybe they don't realize and they don't understand that transition part of it because I mean you saw like Nolan Ryan, yeah, he was dominant. I mean, I don't know, if not the best, one of the best pitchers ever to actually throw a baseball.
Mm-hmm.
But you actually had Nolan Ryan and you had the rest. Now you have, I don't know, like on a Paul Skeens, you actually have DeGrom, like all kind of one after the other that and then this hitters are adjusting to velocity, speed, change of it's insane. Like I know how they're able to make that adjustment, and of course, I know like this game is a game of adjustments. Like that's a keyword. Adjustments is, and if the batters are are hitting you, you have to make a difference. But what I found interesting about this particular one that stuff, like the first thing that came to mind in terms of like current um, players, like for example, Emmanuel Clase from Cleveland, for example, in the postseason. He was throwing really he was throwing harder than the regular season, and he got let up in the postseason. So it's not about how hard you can throw; it's how deceptive you can actually be with the pitch. So it's kind of one of that balance of going back and forth and whatnot. So, but I think I don't know, we're in agreement that there's a lot of things that need to be addressed at an early age, and also at the major league level. The other part that I found quite interesting here is that the injuries, or the pitcher reported injuries, let's just call it reported, because I mean, as we know, some of them are not reported, they're called fatigue when they're actually truly injuries. There's a steady increase, or like the highest ones are spring training, but there's a decrease in regular season. So I found it quite interesting, especially on the spring training side. I don't have the exact numbers here, but when I was actually doing my research, there's a correlation between players that do not play in the winter ball and players that do, because they're trying to make the team at the end of the day, right? So they're not going to go, okay, I'm going to build up and use spring training to actually build up, even though they've been throwing bullpens in the off season. But there's a difference between throwing a bullpen and actually pitching real games, right? So it shocked me that I don't know, it didn't shock me that obviously the numbers were high in spring training, but it shocked me that in the regular season the numbers are actually going down. What do you think about that?
Well, I wonder. Again, I think the era of the off season is when you rest and then you start getting back into it, and then spring training is gone. I think a lot of guys are taking maybe a couple weeks off once the season ends. Spend a couple weeks down in wherever on the beach, and then they're basically right back into training. And the off season's for improvement now. It's getting on the mound, it's going to the clinics, it's lifting weights, it's doing all the band work and all that good stuff. And then the season's basically therapeutic, right? What's your routine to get things going? You watch the Scenes of the world, and I think the guy who really brought attention to it is the perpetually purgatory Trevor Bauer.
Yeah.
These long warm-ups with this ridiculous amount of equipment. That's not to get better. That's to make sure you're not getting injured.
Absolutely.
They're probably doing that in the off season, but then they're also trying to get better. So they are pushing their limits when they're not in the middle of the season. So my take is that the off season's for improvement. That's when they're pushing it. That's when they're trying to develop new stuff. That's when, the off season market's coming. There's a lot of pitcher movement that happens in the off season. There's not as much pitching changes that happen, around the trade deadline in the regular season as much as there is in the off season. So if you come off a mediocre season, but you put up really good numbers in training, you're showing, improvement on your changeup, and you're trying to get a contract to be a reliever somewhere. I think that's the model now.
Yeah, and I totally agree with you. Like, I mean, and the part that I actually find quite interesting, especially going back to what you mentioned, like in terms of like those young kids that are actually trying to come up, that sadly they're already on their like first or second Tommy John surgery because they're trying to go max effort every single pitch, day one in spring training, because they're trying to impress. Because as we both know, the difference between a minor league contract and a major league contract, even if it's, I don't know, like the base salary in the major leagues, you can actually be making $50,000 a year compared to the league minimum, which is $1 million a year. So, I mean, I understand why, but at the same time, it's one of those things that in the past, like I know, like of course we're talking years ago, spring training was to get ready, not necessarily you have to be ready for spring training. Now is day one spring training is not about just like soft toss, long tosses. You're ready to go up bullpen, ready to go, and so the season becomes like that 12 months a year kind of scenario, which kind of like upsets me every time that they actually say, well, I don't know, like baseball, it's just kind of like one of those things that I don't know, like for fat people to actually play. And it's like, no, like, I mean, it's a 12 months a year kind of thing. Like you said, you take 2 weeks off, get married or whatever, go to the beach, and that's about it. But they're expected to be ready to go at any given time. And if they get traded mid-season, they have to prove that new team. And if that happens in November, guess what? Suck it up, Buttercup. You got to show me what you're ready for.
And I wonder on top of that too, how much your representation is sending not just your game footage to the managers, but those analytics. I'm sure a lot of baseball fans are looking at these kids in Driveline coming out of college where they're throwing a bullpen, but they have all these analytics coming up of their spin rate and their curve, which they're not getting from their game data. I would bet you if we got our hands on some of that scouting footage that these agents are sending out, you're going to see a lot of that stuff clipped in where it's like, hey, he was throwing his fastball, mid 90s, but now he's developed this mid 90s two seam that's got 6 inches of break and, whatever spin rate and angle. Here's the Driveline footage of it.
Yeah.
What do you think? And I think managers are looking to that analytics as well.
Yeah, no, and that's kind of one of those things that it's I agree with you. Like, I mean, and the other part, and I mean, I know we keep dwelling on the whole young pitchers and actually kind of learning how to throw and not throw. I've noticed, especially on like going to spring training for the last 10 years or so, and just kind of watching the bullpen, even on day one in spring training, they're going max effort, right? So, and it's kind of like that difference, like you said, like when you're in college, you go into spring training after you finish college at what, 21, 22. But you get these guys from, I don't know, from Cuba, Dominican Republic, or even, I don't know, Mexico, at 19 because they sign at 16, and they're going max effort at, I don't know, like what, like 95 mile an hour day one. I don't know, when you're coming in at 22, I mean, you want to do the same thing, but you're not mentally, physically prepared because, like you said, in college, you had a game plan, you had a that projection, you had a specific element that you develop your pitches. You might be a better pitcher, but I don't know, in terms of what you throw, it's not. It's kind of like I wouldn't say not valued, but I mean it's definitely put like on a side when they're kind of like going to determine that particular talent, and it's not when the injury is going to come in, and that's when they really say, oh yeah, this guy knows how to pitch. Yeah, yeah, you're not throwing in 105, but you know how to pitch and get people out. That's kind of
Yeah.
Mike Burley comes to mind. I mean, he was not blowing people away, and he's getting a statue in Chicago. So
No, and shout out to Mark Burley for still being the fastest pitcher alive.
yeah,
Love that guy. He was
Yeah.
the pitch clock before the pitch clock. And I mean,
Yeah.
a note on the injury side of things too. I think
Mhm.
the fear of injury is lower as well. Like we
Yeah.
talked about the guys having Tommy John once or twice. It wasn't that long ago before Tommy John didn't even exist. And if the guys who took it, it was like, their career's probably over. And now
Yeah.
they're back, they're better. And, we consider the steroid era over. And I think that's true in the sense that the guys who are taking test and D-ball because they're buddies with a bodybuilder, that
Yeah.
era might be over, but you're kind of a fool to think that PEDs aren't being used.
Oh,
And even if it's,
100%.
stuff that isn't being regulated, if it's stuff that isn't being tested for, it's these compounds that are improving recovery. It is non-steroid or non-PED alternative, stem cell therapy, PRP,
Yeah.
all these massages and these really good recovery techniques that they have access to. So if you're coming in the off season and you're like, I'm going 100% because I need to prove myself, and if I blow my arm out, the footage is still there. A scout's going to pick me up. And if I'm saying, hey, I'm off for 6 weeks, I'm getting Tommy John, no one's being like, oh no, he's going to be useless forever. They're like, oh, he's probably going to get better. So
yeah, and that's one thing. That's a great point.
Like, I'm not trying, during the season, I'm trying to put up as many innings as I can and provide a lot of valuable stuff and improve my WAR and all of these things. And then in the off season, it's like if I get hurt, it's not an end of career anymore.
Absolutely. Yeah, like I find, especially, and that was such a great point that you made in terms of the Tommy John part of it. Before it was actually, oh yeah, you're having Tommy John, you're done. Like now, Tommy John is almost like a building block for these guys, because oh yeah, you're stronger, you went through it. Then like now you're gonna have a stronger arm, you're gonna have a stronger recovery time, and I find it, I find that a sad way to actually look at it. Unfortunately, it's the reality. But it's a sad way that, oh yeah, you have to kind of wait for somebody to actually have Tommy John to actually kind of take them seriously to a certain extent. But I mean, I think this report, at least in terms of like when my conclusion in terms of this particular one is, they need to actually go a little bit deeper than just like, oh yeah, they're going max effort, that's why they're getting injured. Yeah, but why? Like, I mean, why is it? Is it a mentality thing? Is it the teams are actually asking a lot of them? Is it that there's a lot of people in camp and they're actually going to have to take the, I don't know, like the cream of the crop kind of thing? I don't know. But I think this report, even it's a good start, in my opinion, for Major League Baseball. But it's something that they need to continue kind of pushing. It's definitely not, if they really want to make a difference, I think they need to continue a little bit more, like going deeper into not just, oh yeah, this is the medical part of it, but none of like the mental side of it, which as we both know, that's the majority of the thing. And like the physical part of the game, I don't know, maybe what, 20%, but the 80% of the mental part, it's a completely different beast, right? So
I mean, a quick bit of trivia as well. Tommy John had his surgery in 1975. We are 50 years past the first surgery. In 77, he had his first 20-win season. So, like, even since the conception of this surgery, it has, a track record of improving people's career. So, it's weird that it had a period of stigmatization, but I mean, it's long gone now. What do you think about, and this kind of idea popped in my head of, trying to figure out a way of better balancing the competition between pitchers and hitters? What about, having pitchers pick, you can throw 3 different pitches this inning. You can, you can choose each inning how many different pitches you want to throw, but you have to restrict yourself to 3 and try and make it work. Again, your thoughts on that?
I think that would be ideal. I know that way it's going back to learning how to pitch, instead of going max effort. Like especially for those guys that, like for example, remember Carlos Villanueva that used to pitch for the Blue Jays and Mariners. He was one of those guys that used to actually be a fastball guy. He got injured, and he had to learn how to throw that changeup. So, and he became a nasty changeup. So picking those three pitches, it will force you to actually think about what you need to do, not necessarily throw the ball and then hope for the best, which a lot of these guys, for like, I mean, having covered minor leagues recently with the Vancouver Canadians, watching them, some of them, they're just throwing the ball. They're literally just throwing the ball as hard as they can, regardless of whatever, I don't know, like they want to work on that part, which is what they're trying to change as an organization. I think it's a great idea. Me personally, I would actually limit them to two. You have two pitches, that's it. Pick your spots, that way you can zero in on how to use it, not necessarily, oh yeah, I have three to pick from. Now you have two. Whether it's a changer, whether it's a slider, you have two, figure it out, and then you have to pitch 3 innings with that. So that way it kind of gets your mind. I mean, you might be able to kind of switch them back and
Right.
forth, but that's what I would
You know
do.
what? Shout out the Savannah Bananas to because they would be the ones to best try it. I would have the batter pick the two pitches he wants to see.
Wow. That would be kind of cool. That would be
Wouldn't that
kind of
be
cool.
fun? Like
That would be fun.
he comes up, yes, say, I want to see your four seam and your cutter, and then you have to try and make it work.
Yeah. That would be kind of cool. Yeah. Like, I mean,
I mean,
definitely.
guys like Lance Lynn are pretty successful as pretty much 50% fastball pitchers. So
Yep. Yeah, I know. You have like one guy, what's his name? Came from the Yankees bullpen. I think he only had one pitch. I don't know. Like
yeah,
Mariano something. I don't know.
yeah,
I know, only had one pitch and he still
yeah.
couldn't actually get it,
Mariano
right?
French
So
Riviera, right?
yeah, Mariano French. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and that's kind of going back to it. Like, I mean, one, like the people that they know how to pitch, they don't need to throw 100. I mean, 100 helps. But like for example, like I know you see guys like Felix Hernandez. He's starting. Okay. He started another throwing 97, but at the end of his career, he was not throwing at 97. So he had to make that adjustment and kind of, figure out a way to actually get people out, and he managed to do it. Then he got injured, and that was the end of that. But that's kind of like the key thing for that. So Alexander, let's move on to the regular season. And but this was actually a great conversation, and I think we both agree that the Major League has to actually work on improving this particular report and see how far they can actually take it, and we'll see how it actually works out. Okay, so we'll see you guys in a sec into the regular season. Regular season. And all right, so now we are in the regular season. This season we'll talk about the notable baseball dates, and also we'll kind of throw out there what team do you think it's the most improved so far, and a little bit of a tip for those of you that actually like to gamble. Obviously, in terms of the notable dates, you have the Tokyo series, which I have mixed feelings about that Tokyo series, and this year is going to be between LA and Chicago. I don't know what you think about that, Alex. I don't know, just too much.
Yeah, I mean, I'm open minded. I love international
Yeah.
baseball. I think it adds a level of flavor to it. And yeah, what are your thoughts so far?
I mean, I like the series, but being March 18th and opening dates in April, I mean, that seems way too early. Like, like those guys are, I mean, I understand, like, I know there's a marketing aspect of it. I mean, pretty much three-quarters of the Dodgers are from Japan. So it's gonna feel like a home game, but it seems like a little bit too early. It's basically the conversation that everybody has about the World Baseball Classic. I mean, it seems a little bit too early, but again, internet, the whole point is actually internationalizing the game. So I think it's going to be a great marketing tool for especially for the Dodgers. Well, opening
So
day.
when would
Yeah,
you have this in?
me
Sorry, when would you
personally,
have this instead?
I would actually have it. Me personally, you're going to laugh at what I'm going to say. I would actually have it in the All Star break, like something like that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I mean that way everybody's ready to go, whatnot. Um, I mean, the All-Star break, I mean, I know it's a festivity and all that kind of stuff or whatever, but I mean, there's so many different things. There's the All-Star break, there's also a game, there's the home run derby, then there's the prospect. It's a like it's a whole thing, right? So I mean, this game's like that. I mean, if you truly want to see like what everything is actually built for, have it right before the All-Star break. I mean, that way you kind of give them time to kind of get ready and all that kind of stuff, and then you don't get them to travel, get used to time differences, and then actually travel back, then be ready for opening day in March 27th. I mean, it that seems a little bit kind of pushing it, but that's just me.
What
I mean,
about what about replacing a part of spring training
mhm.
and then have the winning international team play the winning all-star team?
Ooh, that would be kind of cool. See, that would be kind of cool. And
Because
actually, I like that. I mean, Major League Baseball. At least they're doing something about it. I mean, they're trying to kind of make that last week of spring training matter somehow, like playing the fields or whatever. But that's a great idea. I mean, that's I never thought about that.
Because I mean, it
Yeah,
would be pretty easy to bring these teams here during spring training and mix them into the games. I don't think
yeah,
that would cause too many problems. I think the bigger issue is the MLB teams going
yeah,
overseas and then dealing with whatever jet lag comes from that. If there's any
exactly.
customs issues that always come up, there's always some teammate
Yeah,
who gets busted with something he ought not to have.
yeah. Or they eat the wrong kind of food. You never know,
Yeah.
right?
Or maybe
I
we're
mean, they
wrong.
already
Maybe
do
this
that
is going to be
for
great.
the World Baseball Classic, right? I mean, they come and play, against the Dominican Republic team or whatever, like in the middle of spring training. Why not? I
Mhm.
mean, it definitely makes a difference. I mean, they're trying to kind of do that in the Caribbean World Series. Right now, they have a team from Japan playing in Caribbean World Series. So I understand how. I don't know, like I definitely, I don't know, it would be a good idea. Realistically speaking, I mean, putting that none of that world team together will be kind of an interesting one. And how do you pick what team that they play? That'll be a different one, but that's a kind of interesting idea. I like it. I like it.
Yeah.
Going into opening day, the first game, official opening day, will be March 27th. The official game will be between the Rockies and the Brewers and the Yankees on an interleague game, and then the Pirates would actually be in Miami with Paul Skeens on the bump. I don't know, like it's already been announced. Then after that, the other important date, which I absolutely love this weekend, absolutely love it, the rivalry weekend. I think that's the greatest idea that Major League Baseball have actually had,
Yeah.
to cultivate that, because I think that's one of the things that the game is actually lacking right now, building that rivalry. I mean, we all know about the Yankees and Red Sox and whatnot, but having that like those ones, especially the small market teams, and having that rivalry weekend that regardless of whatever they're gonna do, they actually have it. I think it's great. I think it's absolutely great. Um, Beyond that, they have the trade deadline that this year's July 31st. Um, I don't know if I don't know what you think about this one. Like, Mika, I know it's July 31st and they eliminated the whole waiver wire thing. Would you leave on a July 31st as the trade deadline, or would you push it back if it was for you? Because you still have minor
I,
leagues playing August.
yeah. I mean, I think one of these things I don't care to speculate too much on. I
Yeah,
just rather see how it plays out. I am generally for the MLB changing rules, changing things season to season to
yeah,
try and improve the game. Even if it doesn't work out, even if it makes things worse, the whole point of it is we don't know until we try it.
true.
And the point of it is it's going to be the gold standard. And if other leagues are doing things that we should adopt or the MLB should adopt, like I said, we like we're a part of it, that
Yeah,
the major leagues should adopt to reset that standard and improve, not just the quality of the game, but the quality of the experience of the game. So,
yeah,
let's try it and see what happens. If it sucks, then don't do it
yeah,
next year.
exactly.
But if it's great, keep it, right? Like,
Yeah,
I'm glad that they're not, trying to hold true to traditions for the sake of traditions. There's a lot of baseball that's already super traditional, and
yeah,
that's worth preserving. I mean, the fact that we wear wool pants to play a game in the summer, like that's
yeah,
probably not going to go away. So,
yeah,
you know, let's let's change these things around the outside and see if it makes the game better.
yeah,
I have
definitely.
no idea on how this is going to play out, but I'm interested to see.
Yeah, no, and definitely, in my opinion, anyways, the last few changes that the major league Major League has actually made. Other than the bases size, have been pretty good, especially the pitch clock. I don't think it's a contributor to the arm injury, in my opinion. But they have actually made the game faster and easier to kind of understand, especially for, I mean, you and I mean, we can actually watch a 5 hour game and still be fine. But not a lot of people actually be like, yeah, well, I'm fine going to like back to back 5 hour games. But it has actually made the game a little bit more compact, a little bit more enjoyable for like the regular fan. Um, but I mean, there's some other stuff like I mean, the big like a big bases. I mean, they look like a picture box. They're a little bit, you know, like I pushed a little bit, but again, at least they're trying, which is a key thing for that.
And do you think the base and the number the pickoff limitation was
Mhm.
like in tandem was the contributor, or do you think we could shrink the bases, keep the number of pickoffs to two, and we would
Mhm.
still get as many stolen bases? Because I like stolen bases. Like
I
that's
love
a
stolen bases, but I mean, in terms of making it bigger, is it make it that much of a difference? I don't think so. I truly don't think so. Like, I mean,
no.
you'll get more people on the bases because they can use the outside of the bags or whatever. But at the same time, I mean, it's I don't know. Like that was the one that, but again, that's just being picky.
Mhm.
I'm actually looking forward to. I mean, I saw it in and minor league ball when they were testing it out. The robo calls. They'll be kind of interesting. It's not what a lot of people talk about. It's like, oh yeah, well, the umpires are going to go away. No, no, no. This is a challenge system that you're completely different. That a lot of people are like, yeah, there's going to be a bunch of robots actually calling balls and strikes. No, this is just a challenge, a particular one. So it's I'm actually looking forward to it. I'm not sure if you have actually seen about it, but
I'm 100% in on the robo umps. I
yeah,
think um, it's an unnecessary dynamic to the game having umpire discretion on some calls. And to
yeah,
be fair, the majority of umpires make good calls the
yeah,
majority of the time. And we're catchers, so half of our job is
yeah,
making sure the umpires like us.
exactly,
Um, and we're always being a little bit extra friendly to make sure we get a few inches on the outside. But
absolutely,
um, I think just eliminating this is a quality improvement. And
yeah,
I'm for the umpires too. I don't know any umpires who are like, no, I don't want any help picking balls and strikes. Like,
yeah,
has
yeah,
there been any like other than I assume the umpires union would be kind of
yeah,
upset because the idea of job security, but the fact that there's still going to be someone standing there making
yeah.
decisions, we still need someone behind home plate to make calls and pick up the foul lines and all of the stuff that we need them for. But in terms of being the difference maker in a lot of ways that is not necessary, I think is huge. And hitters knowing exactly where the strike zone is, pitchers knowing exactly where the strike zone is, gives them the confidence to approach and play with an intensity and not have
Yeah.
to cater to the Angel Hernandez's of the
Yeah,
world
which no,
disposal.
no, which I'm glad that he's retired now, so we don't have to kind of put up with him anymore.
Yeah, it would
Um,
be like if we had a rake in the middle of the base path and we're like, well, we've always had the rake. We don't. Sometimes we
yeah,
need a rake of infield, right? Like a rake's
exactly.
a tool. We
Yeah,
just don't need it in the base path. So bring
yeah.
on the robo umps. Let's just
Let's see how it
clean up
actually flies,
the
right?
piece of dispute and carry on.
Yeah, absolutely. I 100% agree. Going back to like our list, I think this is one of the weekends, or actually they made it a week because he is worth a week, not even a weekend, a week of celebrations, which is Ichiro Suzuki.
Yes.
The Mariners have announced a week of celebrations. They're going to give away bobbleheads, jerseys, retirement jerseys, a retirement ceremony, like you name it. That they're going all out August 5th to the week of August 5th. So I definitely will do everything in my power to go at least a couple of days. For those ones, it's going to be an interesting one. I still blows my mind that he's not 100% a Hall of Famer, like in terms of like votes. But there's always that one person.
Yeah, and not to announce whatever his face is, but I don't see how he should have a job after that. That
Yeah,
is silly. You have a 3,000 hit franchise level player
yeah.
who was easily transcended the game of
Oh,
baseball,
absolutely.
akin to the Babe Ruths and the Barry Bondses and
Yeah,
even the people who don't know baseball probably know Ichiro.
Oh, absolutely.
The fact that no one has replicated what he has done, with the fact that he was 2 steps out of the batter's box every time he swung,
Absolutely.
hit for power,
Yeah.
and chose not to. Like,
Yeah.
in terms of someone who's significant, and Mr. Mariner, like that's insane.
It just blows my mind, and especially to like a guy that, to put it under perspective, I was actually on on a live with a couple of friends of mine, to think about it this way: Ronald Acuna Jr., like at his age, like on all the hits and all the MVP and blah blah blah, Ichiro hadn't actually started in the major league. So we're talking Acuna age, 0 hits, and he's still gonna make hits 3,000 hits and not unanimous. I mean, that just absolutely blows my mind. But I mean, maybe they missed the ballot. They didn't have their coffee that morning. I don't know, but it also shows the class of Ichiro. His response: "I just want to have him over so he can actually explain it to me." I mean, that shows class.
Yeah. I mean, I hope that's a ploy to whatever noogies or wedgies that he obviously deserves. But
yeah,
I mean, how many records does Ichiro have that a lot of first ballot guys don't have?
Yeah.
How many consecutive, was it 10 200 hit seasons?
Yeah.
Most hits in a professional career?
Yeah, no, like, I mean, I think he had an average of 232 hits a season. I mean, something absolutely ridiculous.
Rookie of the year, first Japanese player in the Hall of Fame, I believe.
Yep.
Most Gold Gloves for an outfielder. It's like,
yeah, like, come on, what else do you need? Yeah.
Who is? Like,
yeah. I mean, with all the respect to Mariano Rivera, for me, Ichiro is more 100% of the votes than Mariano is. That's just me. And I'm not taking anything away from Mariano Rivera, because I think he's amazing. And there's a reason why he's in the Hall of Fame. I mean, one of the best, if not the best closer ever. But I mean, if Ichiro is not, what are you comparing it to? I mean, you can't. So, but yeah, so we definitely, hopefully I'll see you there as well for that celebration, because I think it's worth celebrating. Two other guys that definitely going to be celebrated by their teams are David Wright. They're going to return their number in Flushing Meadows. Definitely one of those guys that, if it wasn't for injuries, definitely would be a Hall of Famer in my opinion. And your boy Mike Burley having a statue in outside Rate Field. They changed the name from guaranteed rate, rate field. I guess they cannot guarantee the rate anymore, because now it's called rate field. So they're going to actually have a plaque and a statue outside there. They also announced the last weekend play this year is going to be 1 week before. It's usually the first week of October. It's going to be September the 26th. It's going to be the last weekend of the season. So there's a lot of dates there that will be kind of good to follow, and a lot of great things going on. I think they announced today as well the Elvis Andrus, which I don't know, definitely a character for the Texas Rangers. It's going to be inducted into the Texas Hall of Fame. So I know a lot of great things to kind of move around the league for that. So
and a quick note on David Wright. There are some players. Everyone playing basketball has grabbed the ball, shouted Kobe, and thrown the ball up towards the hoop.
Yeah.
David Wright is the type of player. If you don't know, go look up his over-the-shoulder bare hand catch.
Oh, insane.
Tell me that you haven't seen someone try and replicate this in practice.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
As a part-time third baseman, when I am not catching, I know every third baseman has tried to do the David Wright. That is one of the coolest casual plays ever made in baseball. Look it up if you don't know.
Yeah, as a third baseman, that is the coolest. Catch. Absolutely, the coolest, most unbelievable catch as a third baseman I've ever seen. Like it's and not only the catch, but the moment it actually happened. It's kind of like it was one of those epic moments that everything aligned. I mean, it was David Wright. I mean, like I said, if it wasn't for injuries, he was a first round Hall of Fame, in my opinion.
I think so. Yeah. With the tattoos putting up, absolutely.
Yeah, exactly. So,
Although, so in terms, if Ichiro isn't,
yeah, well, yeah.
we'll let our bitterness go for a bit.
Yeah, exactly. We'll just kind of move on, otherwise we might be stuck here for a bit. Okay, so in terms of looking at the most improved players, I don't know, like I think, well, obviously being in Canada, we definitely have to talk about Canada's team.
Mhm.
Uh, I think it's they definitely, even though there were Cinderellas and a lot of the big free agent moves, I think they have actually done enough to at least being in the conversation for the American League East. In my opinion, I think they still have they're a couple of pieces away, especially in the middle bullpen. They need to address before they kind of be considered as true contenders. But adding Santander, Scherzer, Miles Straw, which in my opinion was more to actually get prospect money to go to Sasaki, but it's another addition. Christian Betancourt to actually help Kirk behind the plate, finally getting another closer after the Romano departing. I think they definitely have enough pieces to push. They definitely not going to be last, in my opinion, in the American League East. I don't know what you think about that.
Yeah, I mean, the problem is that is the biggest gauntlet of a division in baseball. You have,
Yeah,
you have the Yankees who have been strong for a while, despite their ability to accomplish in the postseason. So, as much as I'm a Red Sox and a non-Yankees guy, they're they're pretty well locked for 1 and 2. They haven't really lost anything, even though Soto's gone. Like they're still
yeah,
up there. Boston always manages to put a good team together. It's just Boston's always a game of atrophy. It's whether or not they're going to hold it on to whatever momentum
yeah.
they have. If they do, they win the World Series, and if they don't, they disappear into oblivion 2/3 of the way through the season.
True.
You have the Rays who always manage to put something good together at some point for no reason, being the weirdest
Yeah,
run
the cheapest
organization on planet
payroll
Earth.
ever.
That would need an entire episode on itself to explain the.
Well, we definitely have plenty of time, and you're more than welcome to actually discuss that.
And we need a psychologist for that episode.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
And who
Yeah,
knows what the Orioles are going to do? They,
yeah,
as the A's of the AL East, like they sometimes put together a really good ball
yeah,
team of people you don't expect to do well and make a run for it, and then
yeah,
nobody shows up to those games, and then they dwindle into oblivion. So
yeah. I think
I
the Orioles this year is going to be the team that is going to be the disappointment of the division. I don't know because a
I
lot of
think
the
so.
guys last year, they were overachievers. Um, I don't know, and they lost Corbin Burns. They lost a bunch of key pieces that I don't know if they'll be able to replace them. I don't know.
No, for sure. And
Yeah,
but they'll get
but you never
some
know.
draft
You
picks.
never
They
know.
might have some guys hot in the minors and
Yeah,
eager
because
to
then
come up and get a shot. They're usually pretty good at bringing up the guys from AAA and
yeah,
working them in. So it's hard to say. There's a lot of these teams are pretty young, which is it's a
very
huge
young.
thing.
Yeah,
So I think it's not unreasonable to assume that there might only be a 15 game spread come kind of June, July between those five teams,
yeah,
and they all might be, you know, 10 games over 500. Like that's not a.
yeah. I mean,
It,
I mean
it might
those
come
guys.
to the it
Yeah,
might come to the slog of August to figure out who's going to come on top and who's going to claim the wild card.
yeah, absolutely. I think I mean the LA East is it's definitely like that division that you never know. It's a coin toss and coin coin toss. And
There we go.
my English is kind of going out the window.
I'm hydrated.
So in terms of what team do you think is going to be? I have one team outside the Canada's team because we had to talk about the Blue Jays.
Mm-hmm.
What team do you think it's the team to watch out for this season?
I mean, I will state my biases out front. They've always been my NL team. I am a Snakes guy through and through. Um, I think they had a little bit of a recuperative year last year after losing in the World Series 2 years ago. I think the Diamondbacks, again, a
Yeah.
really good young team. They have some good pitching, and
Oh,
I think
huge.
they're putting some pieces together. And this might be some snake colored glasses, but I think they can make a run for it.
Yeah,
I
that's
check out the snakes.
yeah, I know the Snakes. That rotation, it's insane. Like, I know, especially after adding Colbert Burns. That I always forget his name. Well, Erod is actually there as well. Gaslin is there. Uh, the guy with the glasses. I always forget his name. Um,
Uh oh,
anyhow, their top five are just like next level. Like, I mean, honestly,
Yeah.
they definitely have all the pieces to kind of make it happen.
Gallon?
Gallon, yes,
Yeah,
yeah.
Zach Gallen.
I mean, to actually kind of have 1-2 Gallon, Corbin Burns. I mean, really, I mean, not very many teams actually have that 1-2 punch. Um, for him, but I agree. I mean, of course, they still have to actually talk to those guys in LA. I think they're called the Dodgies, the Dodgers. I think they're called in that division. That it might be a little stacked. I don't know, but I think they have the pieces to actually kind of fight them for it. But I
Mhm.
think my pick, which in my opinion they're going to be the sleepers, um, but they have actually made unbelievable additions in this offseason, are the Cincinnati Reds. Adding Terry Francona as the manager, that's going to be a ginormous boost for that team. Getting Gavin Lux to play second base after trading India, getting Brady Singer to actually be their setup guy, bringing Trevino to be behind the plate. They got Austin Hayes to actually play in the outfield, Taylor Rogers to actually from the left-handed bullpen guy that can close games. Wade Miley is going to be in that team. So they added a lot of great pieces, and right now they're 78 and a half for the over for wins. I think
Yeah.
that's one of those good bets to make some money there. I think
I think so.
Cincinnati, and they're in a division, they're not exactly, I don't know, like out to begin the season, right? So I think
No.
they're definitely going to be pushing for that division. I don't think that, not even for the wild card. I think they're going to be pushing for that division. I don't know. That's my team this year in
And did
terms of
they
yeah.
re-sign Ellie over the offseason or a couple of years ago?
Uh,
Where's
a
his
couple of
contract
years
at?
ago. A couple of years ago. I know he's the face of the MLB the Show. So, but I think he has like 2 years left of arbitration. I think, if I remember
Mhm.
correctly. But I think Cincinnati is going to open a lot of eyes this season. I mean,
Yeah.
they're being kind of like going up and down. But I think that's a team to watch out for, in my opinion.
And they have Trevino now,
Yep.
who, had a good year for a catcher in New York and
Yep.
did well in the postseason, but he was their second catcher in the postseason, wasn't he?
Yes.
Or was
Yeah,
was
because of
he?
Wells. Wells was actually their starting
Yeah,
catcher.
he was
Yeah.
a stud as well.
Yeah, but no, he batted really, really well in the postseason. Not
Mhm.
what it was, like a buck 20 or like 0.95 or something like that. So I don't think he went above the Mendoza line in the postseason, but we
No,
digress in terms of that.
no, but
I
again, having Trevino behind the plate for the Reds,
He
he's
should
a
prove it.
he's a veteran guy. He knows what
Yeah.
he's doing. Like I think he'll fill a hole.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so we got our two teams. So for me, Cincinnati Reds, who want us improvements, and the Snakes for Mr. Alex. Okay, so moving on into our All-Star break. So we'll be right back. All right.
All-Star break.
So we're back, and we will need a break. So this is our All-Star breaks. Here's where we talk about our local partners, and we talk about our sponsors, and we talk about a little bit of everything outside the lines in terms of like the topics, that Major League Baseball topics. But first thing is first, we'll give you a hint of our trivia question. This pitcher that we were talking about is the only pitcher to have actually won a World Series, MVP, Rookie of the Year, and Cy Young Award Cy Young Award. It's the only pitcher that has all of those accolades. One of two pitchers that have all of those accolades. So, I mean,
Can
that's
I update
probably
my
giving
guess?
it away. But what's that?
Can I update my guess?
Absolutely.
My new guess is John Schmaltz.
No. But that's a great guess. That's a great guess. Joe Smalls was not Rookie of the Year. So that was one of them. But then he had pretty much all the other accolades, right? So he won it with Atlanta. That I think it was MVP when he was a closer. So yeah, so that's a great guess now. So one thing that one of the, other than having a great conversation, I wanted to actually bring Alex into the podcast because I wanted to actually talk about our local partners, because Alex does a lot of great things, especially in sports and amateur sports here in Chilliwack, British Columbia. with Chill TV. And what we wanted to kind of bring to the attention of the people that are listening to us, the work that I know that the community is actually doing to develop adult baseball in the Lower Mainland, in the association with the Lower Mainland Baseball League, the LMBA. So Chilliwack is doing a great job in terms of bringing that flavor of baseball, not slow pitch, not softball, baseball, into the valley, bringing new teams into the fold, and trying to kind of find that balance for those guys like us that still want to play baseball, and having a place to distract ourselves and still produce and still have fun. So, Alex, take it away.
Yeah. So, I mean, what I do when I'm not getting to hang out with my friend Dom and talk about baseball is I cover local sports with Chill TV, which we don't just cover baseball; we cover all sorts of sports. But for me, my heart and soul is always baseball. It's a generational game, and for me especially, it was my dad's game, it was my grandpa's game, and when I moved to Chilliwack, that was one of the first things on my list to check off, which was find a baseball team. I still play in the 18 plus division because Chilliwack doesn't have an 18 plus league, and I like to feel like I'm still young. But once I turned 30, I immediately jumped on the Cubs roster, and yeah, like there's a lot of really good baseball. Like the Chilliwack Cougars, the minor league association does a lot of good stuff. There's lots of tournaments. There's lots of stuff going on out here. A lot of college prospect stuff. The UFE Cascades train out in Chilliwack at the Yard, one of our indoor training facilities out here, and yeah, like our big field at Fairfield Island is a beautiful park. It's a great place to play. It's one of the nicest parks I've ever got to play at.
And to hang out with the family too.
Yeah, I mean, I said our goal earlier, not on the show, but earlier was I'd like to see the concession open for our games. I think that would be.
We're working
huge.
on that. We're working on that.
Here's my case to the layman. Baseball is considered America's pastime, and if you think that there's something better to do on a sunny afternoon than grab some drinks, grab some snacks, come and hang out at a baseball field and watch a game, I will put money on that you are probably wrong. It's one of the best games to watch live, and that's not just as a fan of the game. I think because baseball is a very generational game, like there's a lot of you talk to your parents about the players that you watch and the players that they watched, and resonating with what's going on, and then wandering around playing catch in the outfield, hanging out. It's a good time. I think if you find baseball boring, come out and watch and let us give a chance to explain it to you, because I think you'll be pleasantly surprised with how much fun it is to go watch a game.
Yeah, and the other thing, and like, when are you going to have the opportunity to actually watch your friends actually be on the field and actually kind of like going to show you with their plays how great this game can actually be. And to actually elaborate also something that Alex actually touched on, the LNBA has multiple, like, because obviously a lot of people think, well, you're 18, you go to college, and that's the end of that. The Lower Mainland Baseball League, they actually have 18 and over division, 30 and over division, and 45 and over division. So there's a lot of baseball to go around if you want to keep going. Just because you're 40, that doesn't actually mean you have to play slow pitch. Nothing against low pitch, but if you want to continue playing baseball, I mean, there's room for not only to play baseball, but to actually hang out with cool people at -3 degrees, actually taking BP at the Yard. I mean, really, there's always that opportunity to. So we play all over the Lower Mainland. But I wanted to kind of give a shout out to the work that the Chilliwack Adult Association is actually doing, trying to improve the game. Now we're actually adding an extra team, the D-backs, joining the ranks here in the division, the 30 and over division. But the goal is to actually continue growing and also supporting the local businesses like Chili's that always actually welcome us after the game. So we can, Red Chilies.
Yeah.
That I don't know if you guys actually look at their website, and you'll see our faces and in the advertisement because we're there and there, and we not only we enjoy the game, but we also support the community. So that's absolutely great. And people like Alex definitely is doing that from the other side in terms of not only for baseball, but for local sports, which is the core for everything in the community. It's that amateur flavor of sports in the community.
We
Yeah.
know that Chilliwack is a sports town. We know
Yeah.
Chilliwack is a growing town. And I think if there's a message we can put out there, which is come go watch the game. Don't sit at home and watch
Yeah.
whatever on TV. If you want to sit and scroll on your phone, you can do it on the bleachers,
Yep.
watching your neighbor come play. I mean, I know the fan base is here, and I want them to feel like
Yep.
they have permission to come watch, whether or not it's the 30 plus LNBA team scrapping it out.
Or the
It's,
university, if they want to watch a university
or
games. I mean,
USC, or
yeah.
the college prep, or the U18 kids, or any of the minor league stuff. Like, come check out sport. It's
Definitely.
good. It's good for you. It's a vehicle for inculcating so much virtue and
Yep.
and life wisdom that is really
And it's
rarely
free.
replicated.
And it's
And
free.
it's free.
Yeah.
If you
And
can
then
find
and the nice
parking in
thing,
Fairfield Island, you can come watch a baseball game for nothing.
exactly. And then the key thing too is if you're just curious, I mean, Fairfield Island has that ability to, you can actually park, watch a couple of innings, go for a run, go for a walk. It kind of has a little, you can watch a couple of innings, hang out, go for a walk around
There's
the
a
park.
dog
It's a
park.
medium, so there's a dog park. So it's definitely worth checking it out. Definitely worth checking it out. So
And now with two teams, there should be some pretty good rivalry games.
yeah, exactly. So we'll definitely we'll make sure. So we play at least for Chilliwack, we play Saturday nights. There's the other team. I think I heard a rumor that they play Sundays. So there's going to be games every and all the time. Wednesdays we actually do practice. We might do scrimmages. So if you want to check it out, or if you're interested in playing, there's always information around. So Chilliwack Baseball in our Instagram page, you can always send a message to them, and if you're interested. So definitely something to check it out.
In the description.
Yep. So we'll definitely
Okay.
put that in the description, like the Instagram page for Chilliwack Adult Minor League, and also the LNBA. If you're 18 and over, you don't want to play with the old guys, you can play 18 and over, and you can actually put you in contact with information that you need. All right. So that was our break for the All-Star break, and we'll be right back with the trade deadline segment.
Trade deadline.
All right, so we are in our trade deadline section, and here we're going to be talking about the deferred money phenomenon in Major League Baseball, which it's a topic that we can definitely talk about for hours, I think, because it's not just the Dodgers that's actually doing it, even though they're the ones who are doing it the most. The Blue Jays did that with the Santander deal. The Orioles actually did it before with Chris Davis, and who's going to forget about Bobby Bonilla? I mean, it's nothing new, but of course the Dodgers are making that push and separating the big market teams with the small market teams. So, Alex, your thoughts about that?
Yeah, why don't you give people a rundown on what this actually is technically, so they understand and how this works and why it matters.
Yeah. So in terms of the deferred money, so what's happening right now in Major League Baseball, of course, contracts are actually going up. One of the key factors being Scott Boras, which is one of the most prolific agents in the majors right now. So obviously, because of economics, because of markets, they can in baseball having the baseball contracts being guaranteed contracts, not like other sports that are non-guaranteed contracts. They run into the issue of, okay, now the market goes up, a big lot of players signs, and everybody uses that as a building block reference, but not every team actually has $30 million per every player. So what's happening now, and that combined with the luxury tax to avoid teams going over, they're actually signing players and deferring that particular contract to multiple years, so that way they can reduce the luxury tax and being able to actually afford players. Perfect example, the unicorn, Shohei Ohtani, signed a 10-year contract for $700 million. But guess what? He only makes $2 million this year. So the luxury tax hit it's only 2 million, so they can actually sign other players. But what happens? Ohtani gets paid the first 9 years of his contract, $2 million a year. But then after that, he gets paid $68 million a year for the rest of the contract until it's fulfilled. What happens? People like Ohtani, I don't know, interestingly enough, his contract is already paid for just with the marketing and the contract that they actually got with the Japanese TV stations for like 2.1 billion. That contract is already paid for. So that's kind of like an anomaly in terms of that, because I mean, you're getting 2 players for one. We can actually spend years doing that. But then you actually have other teams that actually have the money. For example, the New York Mets signing Juan Soto. That's a guaranteed, no deferred money. You want me, you got to pay for it right now, period. And then also there's elements where, for example, the Bobby Bonilla contract, which for those of you that don't know, he signed the longest deferred contract in Major League history, where he actually gets paid $1.2 million every July 1st, Canada Day, until 2032, if I remember correctly, Alex, somewhere in there. But was one of the reasons that the Mets actually did that is because it was one of the requests, or said that it was one of the requests for Bobby Bonilla. Instead of getting a chunk of money right now, he actually basically his rest of his life is actually taken care of after baseball. So there's a lot of things there, and of course the Bobby Bonilla contract actually worked in the Mets' favor. Because it was a low amount, but then you actually have other contracts, like for example Chris Davis with the Orioles, that basically crippled the organization because they gave them, I can't remember the exact amount, but a ridiculous amount of money in deferred contract, and then the Orioles basically had to, I wouldn't say rebuild, but they had to kind of really push for a rebuild because they didn't have enough money to sign free agents. So now it's coming back in the forefront because the majority of the players that, for example, the Dodgers actually just added into the roster, which we're talking Roki Sasaki, we're talking Ohtani, we're talking Yamamoto, we're talking Teoscar Hernandez, Kirby Yates, the lefty, Snail. All those contracts for the Dodgers, the majority of them are deferred. Of course, other teams are actually using the tool as well, like Santander with the Blue Jays. 60% of that contract is deferred. So it's not something new, but it's becoming that endemic thing of it. I don't know, do you win now and then basically put your organization in debt in a few years, or do you just buy now and then you still have flexibility later? That's kind of where I think it's worth talking about. Because it's becoming a little bit of an issue for some teams.
Yeah, I mean, shout out Bobby. For those who don't know, I believe he stopped playing for the Mets in like 99.
Correct.
Stopped playing professional baseball in like, what, 2011? Or did he stop playing in 99?
No, he stopped playing for the Mets in 99, and I think he played a couple of years after that.
And I just looked
and then
up.
I think he retired.
He will celebrate his July 1st day until 2035.
Yeah, there you go. I was short even 3 years, and I thought I was actually going too far.
Yeah. So he's got 10 more years.
Yeah.
Getting paid out. So
yeah.
I mean, this is it's very Keynesian economics for those who like the economic side of things. It's splurge now and hopefully the future debts can get paid off. It's very American. It's very Western economy to do this. I mean, the gamble, I think, has lower stakes too, because either the money gets inflated so that the actual burden in the future is less because the value of the dollar is going to go down over that time, or they're going to be able to buy out these contracts, or whatever changes in the organization is going to happen. If they default on it, then it's like, okay, I wonder how much of these are insured, and even if they can get insurance on these contracts.
Yeah, I mean, there's some of them they can. Like, for example, one of the things I was actually listening to, like hearing online, is like, for example, contracts like Bobby Bonilla. What I think is the Mets is actually doing, they're investing that money at the beginning of the year, like it's part of their roster, and at the end of the year, the interest that money made, Not only they paid Bobby Bonilla, but they put it back into the team. So I mean that in itself is actually definitely a brilliant move by the organization there. But the question is, are the Dodgers actually putting $68 million aside and let it ride? Or because, I mean, by the sounds of it, based on what I actually was reading, I might be wrong, but I mean, that's what a lot of people are saying. They're using that $68 million or not paying Ohtani to pay all other deferred or non-deferred contracts. So it's not that they're putting it aside, but again, they have one of the biggest consortium of owners in Los Angeles. They can actually kind of afford it. But at the same time, when all of the other ones hit, it's not going to be 68. It's going to be 68 plus the other contracts. So your roster cost is going to be ginormous. We're talking today, I know it's 2025. Ohtani signed last year, correct? So he's going to be getting paid until 2044. I mean, think about it that way. 2044.
Late 2023 for the 24 season.
Yeah. So, I mean, 2023, 2024, because I mean, it's 9 years to 2 years and of 2 million plus 11 years of, 10 years of 2 million and 10 years of $68 million. I mean, that's a chunk of change. That's a chunk of change. And you don't know if he's actually going to get injured tomorrow. I mean, Ohtani has already had 2 Tommy Johns. So, I mean, he's a unicorn. He's worth every penny, in my opinion. You're getting 2 players for 1. He might be pitching this year again. But, like, I mean, in terms of Soto, I don't know. I don't know if he's worth that much money, my opinion. But that's just my 2 cents.
I mean, I try to be relatively pragmatic. Is they're worth the money and organizations willing to pay them. So,
yep, absolutely.
Good for them. They're, I think you can't think of these organizations as anything but corporations. That baseball isn't the product of these organizations. It is not their investment strategy. Their income is coming from normal, corporate investments. The Dodgers are a $5.5 billion organization, and that's a lot of debt leverage that you can get on the banking side of things in order to pay for that. And I think that's probably why they are able to do this and have, billions of dollars in deferred salary revenue or salary payouts, because they can get access to the debt in the ways that these low market teams can't. They kind of, we're talking about Walmart versus your mom and pop grocery store.
Absolutely. And I find it kind of interesting how, because this is not a new phenomenon. It just have definitely come on and like onto the forefront. But you see teams like, for example, like the Yankees. Most of the Yankees roster is not paid by the owners. It's paid by the advertisement. So, I mean, like the John Hancock in center field pays for most of the salary. So, I mean, it's kind of how they see their business. I mean, in New York, they see business as they have to pay up front, get it done, in and out. But in Los Angeles, they see it more of a like defer because they have the leverage. So, but of course, like the reason why I wanted to actually talk about it is, I mean, you have the big teams that have that leverage, like, the Dodgers of the world, the Boston Red Sox of the world, even the Astros, one of the oil money that they actually have there. But then you actually have other teams that they have great talents, like, for example, the Kansas City Royals. They don't have that leverage. So the question is it making the league like on balance? Because, I mean, on paper, realistically speaking, the Dodgers should just win for the next 5 years. Suck it up, buttercup kind of thing, right? But, I mean, that's why you play baseball.
I think that's true. And there's a lot of paper in baseball, but baseball's a slog. And baseball is magical in the fact that it's still streaky. Like, the fact that we had again, just 2 years ago, we had a Rangers Diamondbacks World Series. All of them beat big market teams to get here in relatively sensational fashion. And, the money ball does work in a lot of ways. And for sure, you can pick the top 1% of talent, but Shohei Ohtani is not winning games unilaterally. He only gets to bat once every 9 batters. So
if not, you can actually ask the Angels.
So the fact that you can distinguish yourself, and you can say maybe 30% of your time you're going to be right in who the biggest budgets are in terms of their wins, but I bet you if we pull this stat that there's not as big a correlation between budgets and salaries as to wins in World Series as we would think. And that is to the advantage of a 160 game season, and
which is a marathon.
And really the talent of these guys getting the big money contracts is pretty close to the other guys, right? It's like Ohtani had an incredible season, right? Like a Hall of Fame season on its own. But there were other guys who were second and third on those stats charts who weren't exactly
and they're going to get paid. And they're going to get paid.
They're getting paid. So, it's sort of like millionaires complaining about billionaires having too big a yacht. It's like, you're still really, really wealthy. The talent pool is still really high. And if you're a middle reliever for like a Reds team or a Rockies or an Athletics, you're still a good ball player, right?
Yeah.
Like, you're going to have a really good season that will get picked up into a bigger contract, but you're still going to have really good stats when you're making $1 million or
absolutely. And perfect example is like the A's. They have actually picked up a lot of cheap quote unquote in terms of like this high leverage market. I think they're going to be a great team, and they haven't actually spent more than $50 million. That's I don't know, like as cheesy as it's going to sound, like that's a romantic part of baseball. You can actually have the worst payroll, like AKA, I don't know, the Marlins, for example, and they can still beat you at any given day. Nobody wins 162 games, period. Right. So you still have to actually win the division. You still have to go out and compete, even if you have the highest payroll. But like this part, I mean, it's daunting. Like, I mean, we saw like especially in the teams of the 90s and the 2000s for the Yankees, they had like every single big star, if you want to call it that, and Boston, like the Big Papis of the world, and like those guys, and Pedro Martinez, and like, whoa, you see them like Boston walking in, and it's like, whoa, holy cow. And now it's like the Dodgers, like, okay, the Dodgers are walking in, like, whoa. But then you actually have other teams that they have nothing to lose, but you see that deferred money kind of making that juggernaut of like that beast of here comes the Dodgers kind of thing, right?
And that's not bad for the game. I think the biggest contributor to this is not just the size of the cities and the fan bases, it's the TV rights as well. A lot of these big teams, and LA was just able to kind of do this under the wire, was get the TV rights for their stuff, which is huge for that revenue.
Absolutely.
The other part of it too is if, again, you're the Florida Marlins and you might not fill your stadium for the game against the Orioles, but if you have 2 games at home against the Dodgers, people are going to show up to watch that.
They're sold out.
Like, there's a positive aspect to the dynasty, especially in the baseball side of things, where it's like they're not guaranteed to win, and you kind of want to go see your guys go up against Goliath, and they have a chance, and that's pretty cool.
Or even if you don't want to see the game, like your guys actually play against Goliath, you want to see Goliath. You want to see the Otanis of the world. You want to see the Yamamotos of the world. It's like, oh yeah, they're in my backyard. I want to go and see them. They're only
like
one.
There's very few moments where you're watching your home team, go down 5-1 against the Dodgers, and Shohei hits a couple bombs, and then your team scraps back to walk it off. Like, you're going to talk about that game for a long time.
Yeah.
Whereas if you're watching,
but that's the beauty of baseball.
7 game against another division series of guys, you're like, who are they and what are they doing? I don't hate it for baseball. I try and take the forest for the trees with this. They're still players, which means they're going to get injured. They're going to need days off. So it's not so simple that the more money you spend, the more wins you get.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, it just like it, which is kind of worth looking at it from 2 points of view. Like, I see it more of the future of the game in terms of like, are they going to be just going to focus on like 3 or 4 four teams getting all that big talent in the market, and the younger team, the small market teams kind of being like, well, we'll get what we get, kind of, and we'll go from there. but I like kind of like the way you're approaching them. Like, I mean, it's still good for the game to kind of have them in your backyard and kind of like, I know you still have that revenue, especially for those teams like the White Sox. I mean, the White Sox when they play, the Yankees. I mean, they get more people in that series than I think they probably will get all their home games. So it
and
definitely helps.
and not and not that I'm trying to be the animal of status quo, because I would like to see each team be able to own its TV media rights, because
Yeah,
I think that's a good point of equalization.
yeah,
And it's a good incentive structure to, again, market your game to your community, right? Like,
yeah,
get people in the seats, get people watching the games, do something, right?
yeah.
Like,
No,
there's a
like
lot of stuff that goes
definitely.
on during the game that can bring people there, right? So
Yeah, no, like and one team that's actually doing a great job at that is actually, for example, the Orioles. They even actually created even a menu of items under $5 for people to actually go. So they're making it for people to actually go because, like you said, even in the previous segment, watching the game live is a completely different beast than actually watching it on TV. So, but of course, the cost of actually going to a baseball game is not something that you can do every day. But if the teams are willing to do that because they're getting revenue somewhere else, it's worth the gamble at that
yeah.
point. So, yeah.
I mean, my ulterior motive is, and if you don't know, look it up. 10-cent beer night, 1974. Let's bring that back.
Oh, that'll be interesting. Even though I know, like, I don't think it actually worked out very well in Cleveland. Remember when they actually had that 5 cents and everybody went bananas?
You know, are we trying to
You
have a
never
good
know.
time, or are we trying to have a good time?
Yeah, exactly. I mean,
This
they
happens
definitely have
every
there's
day
ways.
in European soccer leagues in the lower divisions. They have
Yeah.
like what, chain fencing around the pitches to protect the players. Like, I mean,
If they wanted, they can make it work, right?
yeah, you want to
Yeah.
fill the stadium and have a good time or not?
Yeah, absolutely,
It's
absolutely. I
American
agree.
beer. What do you like? What are they really going to be able to do?
That's flavor and a flavor water beer, right?
Exactly.
There you go. I
People are going to
actually
get
like I
rowdy
like
after a bunch of Bud Light. Come on.
it. Absolutely, absolutely. All right, so let's actually I love that idea there. So moving on to our second to last section of the podcast, which is the postseason, where we talk about the outside the diamond situations or things that are helping us happen outside the diamond. So we'll be right back, and then we'll talk about the situation with Sammy Sosa.
Postseason.
All right, we're here into the postseason, almost at the end of the podcast, and we're gonna back up and talk about an interesting personality that there's people that hate him, there's people that love him, there's people that go, "Who the heck is that guy? Why are we talking about him?" But I think it's definitely worth talking about for more ways than one. Mr. Sammy Sosa, that earlier this year, he issued a written apology to the Cubs franchise and the Cubs fans about how he left the Cubs. XYZ reasons. He left it very vague in terms of why he left, but he actually apologized and leaving in really bad terms with the Cubs. And the Cubs accepted that apology, and they have announced that this summer they're going to induct him and Derek Lee into the Cubs Hall of Fame. Oh, Alex, what can we say about Mr. Color Changing Sosa?
Yeah. So if anyone hasn't looked up a picture of Sammy Sosa recently, do it and then rub your eyes, look at it again, and realize it's real. Sammy Sosa has, in his retirement, used bleaching cream because, as he says, he likes it. It moisturizes his skin well, and he's gone a little Michael Jackson on us here.
Yeah, the only thing missing is the nose surgery.
Well, you know,
that might be coming. You never know.
Yeah, hold your breath because that'll probably happen.
Yeah.
Sammy Sosa's always been weird.
Yeah.
Not to shout out another podcast, but Dan Rubenstein has an awesome podcast called Sports Wars, and I believe season 6 or season 7, he covered the McGuire Sosa rivalry. I think he called it Saving Baseball.
Yeah.
And Sammy Sosa has always been a weird dude. So the fact that he's, issuing weird statements in his retirement is kind of like, okay,
Yeah, one, I know. It's one of
right?
the few people that actually goes into the disabled list after sneezing too hard in the dugout. Remember
Yeah,
that?
for sure, right? Like, he was a little saucy. He was hitting bombs. He was doing weird stuff. Are
Yep.
we really going to blame the zebra for having stripes? Like, let Sammy be Sammy. Let Manny
Yep.
be Manny. Let's just be okay with the
Yep.
character that he is. He having fun? Sure. Is
Yep.
he hurting anybody? Not really.
Nope. Well, he definitely, and like you said earlier, between him and Sammy Sosa and Ken Griffey, because I mean the thing is that Ken Griffey actually fell off at the very end, but I mean those three they definitely brought back that flavor of baseball and then revived baseball in that particular era. And also after September 11, like the image of Sammy Sosa actually running, like sprinting into the dugout with the American
Oh,
flag or whatever, that was iconic. Like I mean, I'm sorry, but that was iconic for those of you that don't like Sammy Sosa. But like there was nothing better again in terms of like kind of pump kind of getting you pumped for that him and watching him sprint and do that was next level.
I'd be curious to hear what people don't like about Sammy outside of his like outside of the diehard McGuire fans. And look,
Yeah,
I have a poster of McGuire in my bedroom as a kid. I was definitely a McGuire fan in that rivalry, but
yeah,
I mean, it wasn't like boo Sammy Sosa. It's like, oh my
yeah,
god, look at what they're doing.
yeah.
What's the over under on? Did he actually write the statement? Did ChatGPT write the statement, or did a publicist who's trying to get him like what was this just a ploy so he could get into the Cubs Hall of Fame? Like, what's the plan here? This is what I don't get.
Yeah, like honestly, haven't like written the statement that was published on Twitter, which kind of like the randomest statement ever. Like written and like honestly, after seeing it in Twitter, I think even ChatGPT would have actually rejected it. I think it was himself that actually wrote it because it was so incredibly vague that it was one of those, yeah, well, I left in bad terms, but I want to come back by. It was like, okay, all right. If you guys actually want to like, I'll try to put a link in the description so that way we can you guys can actually see this statement. But it was something like, I regret like the way I left the organization, and I apologize to the fans, kind of thing. But it was very out in the open because I mean we don't like I mean we never will never know why he left. Was it because of steroids? Because it was the cork bad? Was it because of management? Because I mean he didn't do anything after that. He went to the Orioles and he batted I don't know a buck 20 after that.
Yeah.
He didn't do much. So we will never know, in my personal opinion. But I'm with you. I think it was just one of those. Well, here and the Cubs came up to him. It's like, look, we want to put you in the hole, but if you don't want to apologize, we cannot stay on a safe face. So write whatever you can, and we'll get you in. So
Yeah, or sign this letter and we'll put it out.
exactly. So, but it will be kind of interesting. Like, I mean, the one thing that I do remember, and for me, they're embedded into my skull, are first and the infectious smile, especially when he, like when McGuire hit and like the record home run, and both of them actually kind of like shaking hands, and McGuire actually doing the Sammy Sosa jump, and Sammy Sosa doing the punch to McGuire. Like, I mean, those are things that definitely saved the game. I don't know whether both of them are Jews or not. Who cares at this point? They saved the game because the games was definitely heading in the wrong direction at that point.
Let alone what he did for the Dominican Republic.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
Like that's an entire thing on its own. What he was able to do. I don't think he was he the first pro from the Dominican? I don't think he was.
No, like I mean, he was definitely the face for Latin America in terms of bringing the game back. I mean, there've been bigger names in terms of like the history, like for example, like Roberto Clemente. I mean, for me, he's the biggest name ever for the Latin players. But in terms of like that era, in the TV era, and like yeah, like I know Sammy Sosa was kind of, and then Big Papi after that, and those two were kind of like those iconic guys
Mhm.
that even if you were not a baseball fan, you knew who Big Papi was and you know who Sammy Sosa was.
Yeah.
I mean, there were other guys that actually had better numbers, but in terms of for the regular average Joe, or that actually didn't watch every single game like we did, they knew who those guys are. So
Well, and how much were they giving back to the community, right? Like there was a lot of
exactly.
players coming from not just that part of the world, but even
Yeah,
smaller areas within America that deal with the the political chaos and the economics. Who are like, cool,
absolutely.
I'm out of here. My family's coming with me. Screw those guys.
Yeah,
And the fact that Sosa did put a lot of back into the Dominican. He was
yeah,
regularly there. He was,
yep.
doing a lot to make sure that
Forefront.
that country was taken care of as best as he could.
No, that's great. So yeah, so I think it's a good move for the Cubs, especially because I think this year they added a couple of pieces that definitely would want to put them in the far front, and then it might be kind of like one of those jolts that gets the fans excited and kind of reminisce on one of their idols in Wrigley. So I think it will be interesting, and without not leaving it very far on that, Derek Lee, that was another great guy there. Those two were great together for that team. So I definitely wish him the best in terms of that. All right, so moving on to the World Series, our very last section of this podcast, which I'm definitely enjoying a lot. So we'll transition into that. We're going to highlight what we actually talked about and the podcast, and we'll reveal the answer to our trivia question. We'll be right back.
World Series.
And here we are at the World Series, the most important part of the season. So, Alex, what did we talk about? We talked a little bit of everything. But bottom line, we talked about arms. Arms, we need to work on this part, not this part. We need to talk about the brain a little bit more before we start doing the max effort part of it. Then in terms of the most improved teams that that we talked about, in your case, the D-backs. In my case, Cincinnati's the team to watch. In terms of important dates, at least for me, it's the Ichiro week. I don't know which one will be for you. But Ichiro week for me, it's like, I know I have it already on my calendar. I'm just about to actually want to buy the tickets probably this weekend for that. Like, I know, give from me to me kind of thing to make that happen.
Absolutely. Treat yourself.
Exactly. In terms of the we talked about the LNBA, basically fun for the adult, the family, because I mean we still can have fun on the baseball field. Shout out to Chilliwack Adult Baseball and the Lower Mainland Baseball League. Then we talked about the deferred money phenomenon, which you can actually defer all the money you want. You still have to be in baseball games, and if this brings people to the stadium, that's all that matters. So a lot of great things there. And we talked about Mr. White, Black, Brown, Sammy Sosa.
Weirdo, but he's our weirdo.
Yeah, exactly. The weirdo Sammy Sosa is going to be inducted into the Cubs Hall of Fame. So to remind you of the trivia question that we had for you guys today, so who's the pitcher with multiple no-hitters outside the United States that had never played for a Canadian team? Your last guess, Mr. Alex?
I mean, CC Sabathia. I'm out of guesses.
Oh, all right. Well, 0 for 3, my friend. But they were great guesses. So
I had a lot of games like that in my career.
Yeah. The guy that the answer is Justin Verlander, that had 2 no-hitters at Rogers Center, one as a Tiger, one as an Astro. The first one, Detroit, and he has had a total of 3. He had another
Mr.
one.
Renaissance man.
Yeah, so he had a third in Milwaukee with the Tigers as well. He just actually got the contract with the San Francisco Giants to continue his career in his pursuit for 300 wins. Definitely a Hall of Famer. I mean, there's nothing to say on and off the field. And the wife that he actually has and family and everything. He's a Hall of Famer around. I mean, what else can you say about that guy?
Absolutely. I mean, if he goes back to Detroit to end his career, he's basically Kevin Costner in For Love of the Game.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Can you imagine him winning the 300 game at Tiger
as a perfect
Stadium?
game in Yankee Stadium.
I mean,
as
come
a
on.
Detroit Tiger.
Wow, that would be.
I don't think we can emotionally recover. Like, there's
Yeah.
moments in baseball lore that stand up there. You have Jackie stealing home. You have Barry Bonds, or not Barry Bonds. You have you have Babe Ruth calling his shot. You have the first what was it? Oh my God, the game in the cornfield. The movie's out of my head.
Field of Dreams.
Field of Dreams.
Yeah.
Like, baseball is so. I think there's no game that better reflects life than baseball. And the moments in baseball are like significant life events for culturally. So
Rookie of the Year. I mean, really, like that happened, and like I mean, Jack, and like that's insane. That's just next level.
He's going to be pitching until he's 80. So
yeah, exactly. So I mean, that's kind of insane. So. All right. So, well, that wraps up our podcast. Alex, thank you very much for joining us. Hopefully, we can have you for many podcasts sessions there. So next podcast, hopefully in the next couple of weeks, we'll be talking about spring training, the big stories from spring training. If everything goes according to plan, I'll be in Florida covering spring training with the Blue Jays. So. And the Vancouver Canadians. So hopefully we can bring you guys exclusive footage of spring training. But obviously we'll do our best, not only here, but also on the field, because we're still playing, Alex and I, here for Chilliwack. So shout out to those guys one more time for allowing us to be part of that community and continuing to contribute into the Chilliwack community as well. So Alex, floor is yours to say goodbye to the guys.
Thank you so much for having me. This is fun. There's nothing I love more than talking about sports and baseball in particular. So whenever you want to have me on, I will make sure I'm here. And so for those of you who want to check out other sports stuff, Chill TV Sports, we're part of the Chill TV family. It premieres Thursdays on Facebook and YouTube. So check us out there. And yeah, we'll see you at the game as my catchphrase on there. And yeah, thank you, Don, for having me. Let's do this again soon.
Sounds good. So I'll have the link to his channel on the comments on YouTube, and this podcast will be available audio only for like Spotify, all the main platforms there. So you can listen into this podcast over the lab and all about baseball that we actually did today. While you're working out, running, and doing everything that you can. So you don't have to, there's no excuse about, oh, well, I have to actually sit there for an hour. No, you can just kind of rewind, stop, and go and do everything that you actually need to do and enjoy baseball talk here at HomePlate 33, the podcast. Thanks again, Alex. And we'll see you in a couple of weeks with more baseball talk at HomePlate 33.